for joining again. It's been a long break. Actually, not long. Spring break kind of was pretty short and probably needed another week to get us back into the form of UChicago. But here we are with another episode of the Maroon Veteran Alliance podcast. And today's guest is none other than yours truly, Truman Custer. If you would like to introduce yourself, sir.
Yeah, my name's Truman Custer. I am the Chief Operating Officer for the Maroon Veteran Alliance. I'm a first year at the college. I don't know what I'm majoring in yet, but luckily I have time. I'm a 5-year Coast Guard veteran, and I'm from Maine.
Wow. Awesome. Thank you for joining us today, Truman. It's good
thanks
to have
for having
you.
me on the show.
Yeah, you're kind of like a needle in a haystack there, because it's not only, you're the only Coast Guard member of the Veteran Society, I believe. Is that correct?
That is true, yeah.
Yeah, so if you could, because I know a lot of people are not familiar with military in general, but they're definitely probably not familiar with the Coast Guard. So if you could kind of take us through what a life of a Coast Guard person is, that would be great.
Oh man, that's such a broad question. So basically,
maybe how does it differ from the other services? Maybe kind of that.
Yeah. So the main difference between the Coast Guard and the other Department of Defense services is that we are both a defense entity and a law enforcement entity. So because of a lot of governing rules and laws, the Air Force, Marine Corps, the Navy, Army, they cannot act as law enforcement entities, and they have no law enforcement jurisdiction in the United States and throughout the rest of the world. They're a military entity. The Coast Guard is very strange because we're both, and we're the only service in the country to do both. As far as what life is like, so you go through boot camp at Cape May, New Jersey. And it's 8 weeks long, which I believe is like the shortest boot camp out of all the services. And unlike the other services, we don't know what we're going to do going into the Coast Guard, both for enlisted and for officer. So what happens is you go to boot camp and then you go to your first unit as what's called a non-rate or a non-designated sailor. And from there, you have to get qualified at your first unit in order to go to your specialty school, which you determine once you're out into the fleet. So for me, my first unit was a patrol boat in New York City. So I went from Cape May to New York City, and I was on the Coast Guard cutter Sailfish for a year, where we did port and waterway, coastal security. We did special security zones, law enforcement, certain aids to navigation. So like the big thing for me there was during the UN General Assembly in 2016, my vessel was the command and control vessel for all maritime assets around Lower Manhattan. So for 2016, we had the president come in. That was President Obama at the time. We had the Pope come in, and then we had over 150 delegates from around the globe that came in. So anything that moved on the water around Lower Manhattan and New York Harbor, we controlled and we knew about. From there, I got fully qualified. Fully qualified is just a certain qualification set on board. So for me, it was in-port officer of the deck. So it's an 87-foot patrol boat, which means it's a crew of 11. So the interesting thing about that is, although I was a low-ranking enlisted member, I was an E2, E3 at the time. At the end of the day, everyone could go home, but someone had to stay on board and make sure that all the systems on the boat remained operable. So I was rolled into a watch schedule as a 19-year-old E3, and at 3 o'clock every day when people left, I was the only person on board for about 12 hours. So
it was like a lot of responsibility.
yeah, it allowed me to get and build a lot of responsibility as a really young sailor, which I think is one of the differences between being in the Army or the Air Force, is because we're so small, that opportunity is sort of thrust at you. So I was qualified as an import officer of the deck, quartermaster of the watch, which means maintaining the logs and maintaining the charts when you're underway. I was an engineer of the watch, and I was also a boarding team member. So when we did law enforcement boardings on recreational vessels and on fishing vessels, I was part of the armed boarding team that went over in a small boat and conducted those. So once I got fully qualified and I was at that unit for about a year, I went to intelligence specialist A school. That was about 18 weeks. No, I'm sorry, that's wrong. That was about 14 weeks. And then from there, I went to Coast Guard Cryptologic Unit Texas, which is in San Antonio, Texas, where excuse me, I don't normally talk this much, so my throat's like yelling at me. When I was at Cryptologic Unit Texas, I learned about ship signals exploitation. So I went to various schools through the Navy mainly, where we learned ship signals exploitation, basic cryptology, and basic sort of advanced signals analysis. And then while I was there for about 3 years, and I did 2 deployments. Well, we call them deployments. I'm sure I'm going to describe them, and Rob and Bre will make fun of me because they were awesome.
Probably.
So the first one I deployed on Coast Guard Cutter Berthoff, which is a 418-foot national security cutter, and we were augmenting that cutter as it went, and was the sole Coast Guard representative at a maritime exercise off of Hawaii called RIMPAC. It was with 26 other maritime nations, and our specific purpose was just to be the sole representative for the Coast Guard, which was really awesome, and it provided a really neat experience. I think the highlight from that was I was the sole representative for the United States with the Japanese during a humanitarian aid disaster relief exercise. Basically, I got painted up with a bunch of fake blood. I got tossed into a small boat, and then a Japanese helicopter destroyer and my vessel, the Berthoff, practiced how they would engage with this exercise and engage in real world scenarios, working together as partner nations. And then at the end of it, I got to go on board this Japanese helicopter destroyer, and I don't speak any Japanese, and no one really on this ship spoke English. So it was very interesting trying to figure out how I was going to get back to my ship, which was now about 15 miles off in the distance.
You were never getting back. You were there for life.
Yeah. Well, I'd heard horror stories about this in the past where people had to get like shuttled via helicopter back to Hawaii, and then an American helicopter had to come pick them up and get them back out to the ship. And I was hoping that wasn't going to happen.
This is a real risk, though.
Yeah, not really.
Did you get to go on did you get to go on shore in Hawaii at all?
Yeah, so
all right, no, that disqualifies it from being a deployment at all.
I
haven't
haven't
had
even
any sort of
yet.
fun at all. It's not a deployment. Sorry.
So the total time I was gone from home was about 3 months. In the middle there was about 2.5 weeks where I was in Pearl Harbor. And because of sort of the intricacy of my job, I didn't really have anything to do for those 2.5 weeks. So it involved a lot of exploring Honolulu's finest establishments and exploring the North Shore of Hawaii and the surfing that it offers.
So how did you deal with the isolation of being deployed?
Oh man, it was rough, you know. God,
well, with as much fun as it sounds like you had in the Coast Guard, why aren't you still in the Coast Guard? That sounds great.
The Coast Guard is an awesome place, and I don't regret joining at all. But at the end of the day, I think we all left for our own various reasons, but they're all very similar in the sense that, we all want to advance our personal goals and our personal lives. And there was only so far up the totem pole that I could go as an enlisted member in the Coast Guard. Very similar to the Air Force and the Army, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So,
So like, you could have done, like, when you got out, you could have done anything you wanted. Well, one, was education always a priority? And two, was UChicago always like your goal?
education was always a priority. Yeah. I took online classes when I was in, and I sort of realized pretty early on that if I wanted to go to a top tier university, I would probably either have to do a lot of school underway, or I would just have to get out and contribute my education through community college, which is what I ended up doing. So I got out, and then I went to a year of community college at Northern Virginia Community College, which is a fantastic community college. And if anyone is listening to this and wants to figure out a way to transition from military to higher education, big shout out to Northern Virginia Community College. Go Nighthawks. They really, really helped me establish good study skills, and establish sort of a new baseline for my grades. Because I'll be honest, my grades in high school weren't the greatest.
Yeah. No, man, I wish we were a big enough podcast to get endorsements from colleges. So maybe next time you keep shouting out this university or college, we'll get some. But yeah, no, that's incredible. And I know, you said you're undecided, but like, what are some of your interests, and like, what are you leaning to any particular, fields of study?
I'm interested in sort of international affairs and economics. So if I can mix the two to sort of do international economics, sort of at macro level economics, I think that would be really interesting. In the past, I expressed interest in joining the Department of State as a Foreign Service officer. I still have interest in that. The second deployment I did, tangent, I guess, I got to go to Asia, and I went to about 6 countries in Asia over 6 months. And that really just lit a fire under my butt. I was like, oh man, I need to travel more. I've been missing out. And so that sort of sparked the Foreign Service officer idea in my head. But while at UChicago, I've explored different areas. So sort of other things I guess I'm looking at are maybe private equity and investment banking, although I don't want to stay in the United States to do that. If I'm going to do private equity or investment banking, maybe I'll go to London or Dubai or Singapore, and just get different experiences.
Yeah, so it seems like to you right now, at least, travel is the main priority over
travel
industry,
is definitely the main priority over industry. Exactly. Yeah. If I'm offered a large paycheck to go and sit in New York and do private equity, or if I'm offered a government salary to go and travel the world with the Foreign Service, I'm going to take the Foreign Service for sure.
Yeah,
awesome.
I'm always looking for that exploration.
Yeah, for people listening, I think so. Truman is another posse member. I know we talked about. Well, I don't know if he still is now, but we've mentioned
but I was.
Posse. Yeah, so we mentioned posse on other episodes, and so posse, our main thing was in New York, and no offense to people in New York, 10 out of 10 would not recommend. New York is not my flavor.
Yeah, New York's just it's not my style. It's so dirty.
Yeah,
that was my main complaint when I was there for a year, was it's so dirty. I have a picture on my phone of a dead cat that floated past our boat.
Yeah,
yeah. I mean, I haven't spent that much time in New York, but I definitely enjoyed the city as a tourist for a few weeks here and there.
It's a great place to visit.
Yeah, I would say it's a good place to visit. Being on Wall Street and doing all the sites. But yeah,
right.
Yeah. So you said you were involved with MVA, and we talked to Ian our last episode, and he's the president, and he kind of gave his take and vision on it. Like, what drew you to MVA? Like, what was something that really pulled you in? And after that, like, what are some visions for the future in your mind, your personal take? Where would you like to see MVA go?
Yeah, that's a good question. I've always sort of lived my life with, leave somewhere better than you found it. And this veterans program, veterans initiative at UChicago is young and has a lot of room to grow in multiple directions. And I do think there is a disconnect between the military and the outside understanding of the military. And I think MVA has a beautiful chance to structure this thought of the military in sort of a really contributive way. So there are multiple veterans associations on campus, and I won't go too far into what all they're supposed to be doing, but MVA, I would like for it to be outward looking. It doesn't all have to be veterans that are involved with this. It can be veterans, ROTC members, people that just want to talk with veterans because we're a little bit older and maybe we've seen more of the world. We have a chance to really impact the campus as we were brought in to do. We weren't brought in to UChicago because we're excelling and getting 1600s on SATs or 32s on ACTs. We were brought into campus because we have a different attitude and a different mindset than the majority of people on campus. And I think sort of just sitting here and doing our work and contributing to the good grades that UChicago members get is good and all, but we have so much more that we can contribute by interacting with the majority of campus and with the community in the campus. And so I know that's sort of a vague answer. I don't want to give away too much of what we're working on right now, but
no, I thought that was a beautiful answer. Thank you, Truman. I think that captures the spirit of MVA wonderfully.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah, definitely.
So since you said you didn't want to get too much into any projects, is there anything you would like to shamelessly plug for the MVA in these last few minutes?
Shamelessly plug. Yeah, the podcast. Interestingly enough, MVA is doing a podcast that's run by Bre and Rob, and they are doing a fantastic job. In fact, we just got a notification via Facebook from another member of UChicago saying they loved the podcast. So
yeah, definitely.
Well, thanks.
Yeah, thanks
no,
for
the
that.
podcast we're working with admissions and like the major activities. I guess they're a department here at UChicago to try and put on possibly a concert here in the fall. We're not really sure on the logistics to that, but we definitely want to have like
voted for the Wiggles. I want to throw that out there. The Wiggles 2020, 2021.
Yeah, I think the Wiggles would really be awesome. Especially good for those that have children as well. Yes. And there are vets on campus.
Family friendly entertainment and all that.
Yeah, I don't know a vet that has family or kids anytime soon, but wink wink. Yeah, no, and I mean I think Ian definitely he echoed some of the things that you just talked about, as well as trying to accelerate the culture rather than accelerate the intellect of the university. Not saying that we're not smart. It's just, like you said, we have a very different perspective on life. We've almost been to college before college. And I know it's like a crude comparison between the military and college, but it's like, just for me, it's like I'm very comfortable with the person I am and who I become. And I just want to share my experiences. I don't want to dominate the room with my intellect or dominate the room with my culture. I just want to share my lived experiences with everyone. And I think that's kind of, one of the tough things that I've come across with MVA is getting that out there, is like trying to, share this experience with the other students. One, because obviously the constraints of just what's going on this past year or so. And it's just, sometimes it's hard to bridge that gap or try to find that common ground that we can have with other undergraduates of the university. And so if you're listening, please spread this far and wide with everyone. Just, share it. Who cares? I think that was a great point about MVA, and I'm really glad you brought that up as like a culture accelerator. And definitely cool.
No, I think, and even for the veterans that are listening, none of us are going to be the smartest kid on campus, smartest adult on campus. You don't have to try to be. What really matters is, sorry, I'm getting a call to tell them later. What really matters is the impact that we can have on the development of the future leaders of America and the world. That's really why we were brought here. It's just because of, the thoughts that we've had over our years in the military, and the things that we've seen, the people we've talked to. That's really why we're here, not because we might be really good at biology, which I don't claim to be. I'm not good at biology.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you are, I need your help.
Yeah, I'm taking this. That's a great point. And like, sitting on your ships in deployment, or, sitting in a tent or somewhere in the middle of wherever woods or forest you're part of, or whatever desert you're in, like you learn a lot about a lot of things in those moments, like with, yourself and with the people you're with, and you learn how to connect with someone who doesn't look like you, think like you. You just, I don't know. It's like this weird bond. It's hard to explain. It's even hard to like put into words, like this weird bond you get and you just develop with people that you from different parts of the world, different, states across the country. It's pretty cool. And I think it would be pretty cool to share with the other students, throughout the community of the UChicago, and hopefully, beyond the borders of the campus grounds, which would be pretty cool, I would think. But that's far in the future, but hopefully.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think we at MVA are maybe struggling right now because of the limited accessibility of campus. Really all we can do is have Zoom meetings and, do Zoom podcasts and talk to people from afar. I think the real moneymaker is going to be when campus opens up again and we can really start to have a person-to-person impact. And I'm excited for that.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Definitely.
As we all are.
Yeah. And fortunately, we just saw, like, if you guys got emails from the university about being restricted even further, but
bummer.
But yeah, so I mean, I'll give you in this last few minutes we have, I just want to give you the opportunity to leave a lasting message, or something that you want to just leave us with. Do you have anything in particular?
Words of wisdom? Yeah.
Not really. I mean,
there it is.
I'm generally not a talkative guy, so have faith in what you're doing. If you set your mind to something, finish it out. I don't know. I feel like I'm reading from like those posters that you see in high school, like your English teacher's room, and you look up and you're staring off into space, and it's some motivational poster that you just completely ignore.
Yeah. But hey,
those are my words of wisdom.
Hey, you heard it here first. MVA, Truman, keep on keeping on. We've got it quoted. But yeah, I just want to give a big thanks to Truman for joining us this week for our episode, and Bre, as always, thank you.
Of course.
For doing this. So I'm sure you guys had tons of homework and whatever projects going on. So thank you everyone for joining us today. Like I said, please, if you see this, share it. We really would love the communication, the outreach, and just that build that sense of community that we're lacking right now. And it would definitely help everyone. So thank you, and we'll see you in a couple weeks. Thanks.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you for tuning to this week's episode of the MVA Podcast. You can catch us every 2 weeks for new guests and topics. You can also head on over to our Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube channel to find the latest updates and content from the MVA.